Okay, so I think it's also important to note that all the presentations that they're going to do, that you don't have to do it as, everything they do, but it's just an idea. You can work with it. You can cater it to what your needs are. So, and also, these ladies are available if you would like to reach them and ask questions about it afterwards. I think you've all put your emails on the handouts, right? Okay, very good. So, Literacy Network, our mission is to transform the lives of adult learners, both immigrant and U.S. born, through the power of literacy, education, and advocacy. So, I think that throughout the 32 years, we've had plenty of examples of how important literacy can be for people that, we started out by teaching people who didn't know how to read, and it eventually grew into teaching English because that seemed to be the need that was growing in the area. And through, people learning English, people have gotten better jobs, they've moved on to study, to get careers. So very important. And then the advocacy piece also is important. I think that as tutors, you've been asked to do things that are outside of just the actual English teaching, and I think most of you are nice and kind enough to want to do it and have done it, so that's also an important piece. Of course, it's always important to understand that you don't have to do anything you don't feel comfortable doing as well. Okay, some quick facts about LitNet. As I was saying, LitNet was founded in 1991 to serve the literate people in Berkshire County. So tutoring provided in the areas of ESOL, citizenship, prep, adult basic education, and GED high step preparation. Of course, so the ESOL is our biggest, that's what we do the most. Currently we have about 200 current learners, and we have about 162 active tutors, which is very big numbers. The citizenship prep, we have a scholarship that where if someone qualifies to get the scholarship who is getting their citizenship, they get paid up to 98 or 100% of the cost of filing the forms and all that immigration stuff, as well as they get a tutor to help them prep for the test, which is pretty awesome. Unfortunately, that's not the majority of people. That just happens to be the lucky ones that are going through that process. And we have plans to get back into our adult basic education and GED tutoring, and we're going to revive that program as well this year. So yeah, more than 90% of I would say more than that at this point, 95% of LitNet learners are immigrants learning English, and we're currently serving over 200 people in that area. Okay. So some facts about immigrants in 2018, 44.8 million foreign-born living in the USA, 13.7 of the U.S. population. The number has quadrupled since 1965, and the number of immigrants is projected to almost double by 2065. And this isn't I don't know if this is an actual stat, but I had heard that Latino immigrants or Spanish-speaking immigrants are now the second largest minority in the United States.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Berkshire County immigrant facts. More than 100,000 immigrants, 10,000 immigrants from 80 countries. The foreign-born make up about 10% of our local population. Immigrants continue to account for population growth in the area. They're the only growing segment of our workforce and are providing critical service in major industries. Immigrants contribute enormously to the local culture, as evidenced by the growing influx of ethnic events and immigrant-owned businesses. Pre-COVID, 41% of storefronts on North Street were owned by immigrant entrepreneurs, and 25% of all hotels in the county were owned by immigrants. And the immigrant impact. So immigrants are more likely to start a business than native-born people. Immigrants who become citizens increase their earning power by 50 to 70% more than non-citizen counterparts. And immigrants or their children founded 43.8% of Fortune 500 companies. So that's the impact that immigrants are having in the area. And important to note that you as tutors are basically their first step into any of that success that people are having, because really English is the first step to any success in this country. People can live in this country without knowing the language. Obviously, I know several people that have been here for years and years and still don't speak English. So I know a lot of concerns from our tutors are that our learners don't get enough opportunity to practice English. And that's because they're working with other immigrants that speak their language. They go home, they watch television in Spanish. And if they have kids, they don't want their kids to lose their language, which is very smart, because then their kids are obviously going to grow up bilingual, but then they miss the opportunity to practice the language. So what I say to tutors a lot of the time is, you are the only English that they have, basically. Their only opportunity to practice. So what you do is very important. And obviously that's shown by all these statistics. It's even more important than we originally thought. So right now, what I would like to do is I would like to invite Elizabeth Youngerman to talk about some things.
Okay.
So she's going to talk about planning, why it's important to plan, what you might plan, how you might plan it. She's going to share approaches, and she's going to share some information with you as well. So I'll let her, if you want to come up here, if you want to stay there, either way.
Is it okay if I stay here?
Sure.
Comfortable. So I'm bringing you things to take home, to think about. So let me pass these out. My reference at the top is to the tutor manual, the old version, or not the one in progress, the work in progress.
Well, so, you all have the old one, and what I don't know if Miguel mentioned, this is a draft that we're about to launch a new one, but the references to the old pages, which Miguel gave you all when you came on board.
So in the work in progress, we're looking at page 11. So when I realized I didn't have 1,000,000 minutes to talk to you, so I decided to write down things that were not in the manual and to think about.
That's fine.
Good idea. So, because everyone can take that home. And these are some things that I've learned from the last couple of years of teaching English as a second language. And particularly, I have taught people from Mali, from Yemen, who don't even have the alphabet. So we're talking about very beginners. ABC. So these are I thought what I'd like to do is just share my thoughts from what I've learned in those experiences to add on to what we already have in the manual.
Sure.
So these are extras, but just as important. So one thing we talk about a lot is getting to know your student's language level, because we'll get a test back and it'll say, oh, except for the one who's number 1,
or 0.
she can't read and write. We have her in our class. But the levels, they vary. And everybody is their own person, where they come from, where they're working, what their experiences are. So don't beat yourself up. It takes time to learn where your student is coming from. And so to me, when you're starting with especially beginners and lower level people, get to know where they are. And that's where you want to meet them. You're teaching them to build on where they're coming from. And we always ask, what do you need? What do you need in your life? And we learn that too as part of getting to know them, because that's what we want to be helping them with and teaching them. And thinking about planning, so I remember in my days, I went to the new school to get a certificate to teach English after I retired from something else. And we learned, make sure you don't plan too much. Be spontaneous. And so you could also remind yourself, don't be too hard on yourself, but remember, you can plan like crazy, but somebody's not receiving what you're talking about, or you're not having a responsive communication. So be ready to change at a minute's notice. And you can be crazy like me and over-prepare, or you can just be a good person who can think well on their feet. But going along with planning is also remember you're in the moment. And as Miguel said, we're not teaching a class that's 3 times a week. Well, maybe some of us are meeting more than once a week, but still, we don't have that opportunity as tutors. So we want to get the most out of that small amount of time we have each week. So we want to be as responsive as possible.
Elizabeth, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just because you said something that intrigued me. If the person doesn't have the alphabet, doesn't speak any English at all, how do you assess what they need? You use.
So, okay, so I'll share an example. We are doing a small class of about 10 people at Kripalu, and somebody tested 1. And what we learned is, no, she doesn't read, she doesn't write. So,
but she does it in her own language.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. So
you don't know though.
So we do know, because now we've been doing this class for 2 months. So she loves being in class, and we encourage her to speak as much as possible, because speaking is the first thing very often.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's possible to learn a language without being able to read and write it.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a spoken.
Yes. So for her, so she comes from an African country, and we'll get her a tutor so she can learn ABC. She can't read and write in class, but she can participate in the speaking parts in class.
So that's another person's doing that.
So we're about to do that, because she doesn't want to leave, and we don't want her to leave the group, because she's a great participant. Okay, and she's really trying to speak, and she can. Which is, that's another thing about being spontaneous, is being observant and be ready to change and adapt. So, okay, this next one, this is an important one from where I've been sitting. Teaching the students how to ask for help, because everybody is shy, or often people are shy and don't have a lot of confidence, and language is hard. Excuse me, unless you're learning Spanish. It's so easy, because everything you read is what you say. It's so easy compared to English. I often think about those experiences. So very important to be able to share. Please ask me if you don't understand. And here's the phrase to use: I don't know. I can't understand. And just right from the beginning, because, and I'm coming to something that's the next, we're talking about showing and demonstrating and working with people, not telling them. Not telling them, because if we just tell, we're not understanding what they're getting back. And these are the sidelines to lesson planning, but almost just as important is how we behave when we're there. So quickly, because I have way too much Miguel here. Okay, I'm going to keep handing out. Okay.
Yeah, just go through the most important things you think.
The most important thing for making a lesson plan and why we plan is because we want to be sure that we are actually conveying something and that the student is learning something. So we all have those little blue books. That's what I use every day, every week, as I write my plan, and then I make my notes at the end of the time that I've met with the students, so that I remember for next time. Oh, we missed this, or I saw.
I just want to underscore that
Yes.
idea of making the plan, but then taking notes about what you actually did, because it's a week goes by and you if you're like me, what did we do?
And also it's important to review because you have to go back to
and you
what
want to
did.
reinforce it too.
Review.
So
Exactly.
just that little bit of note taking can be really helpful.
Exactly. So here's your little plan, which might be just 5 different phrases, and then at the end, oh, I want to remember this for next time. So yesterday I remembered, well, we need to go over greetings again. We really need to do this because we started a class, we started our group, but I saw some blank faces, and so I made a note for next week. So the 2 words that I learned in school, the most important, I think, were reviewing and scaffolding, which is the idea of when you've done something one week, build on it the next week. Reviewing what you did before. English is so hard. It is so hard. It's hard. It's hard to learn. Not to be discouraged, but it takes time. And so every time we're meeting, we want to remember what we did before and review it in some way and build on it in some way. So that was my favorite takeaway from the new school, was the word scaffolding. Build on what you've already done. And you can't repeat something enough. You can't. It's because the more we hear, the more we remember. And I won't be given all I have here. I just say that these last words are going along with planning. It's really helpful to think about what people have actually learned and to sell it at the end of the class, which is partly why we review for the next class and review at the end, but also to celebrate and say, oh, wow, today we learned, or we talked about, whatever way we want to say it, we learned about greetings, a simple one. And you did it. So the first thing I had to teach the Afghani sisters was this. Not talking. It's like sign language. Yes, we did it. So, all right. So, and then finally homework. I think, would you say, Lee and Miguel, that really depends on people's schedules and people's lives. Very, very full. So that's one reason each week I do pieces of paper to take home, so that there's something that if a student wants to review, they have a piece of paper in front to remember. And
or if you're using a textbook, it could be a page.
Or a textbook, yes, if you're using one. And then the other thing about homework is I always ask, do you want homework? Do you want some? And I have to say, every week they say, yes, we do. And they bring it back. And that's also a great way to think about, to understand what the people you're working with, what they comprehend. If they can do the homework and we review the homework. And that's often a good way to start your next meeting. And homework is not like homework with a big H. It's fun homework. Yeah. Okay. So, and that of course includes listening to the news, and watching the weather or whatever on television. Okay. And so I'm going to share a simple lesson plan and then share some resources. And Miguel, tell me if I'm not too much. Okay.
Sure. No, I think you're good.
Okay.
It's good to move on right now.
Okay.
Here
So we have, so with the, this example, so again, the manual talks about lesson planning and what are the kinds of pieces we want to include. Or did you guys get some?
We need one more,
please. Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay.
If anybody doesn't get one, we can.
I have
they can
lots.
come to you.
I made a couple extras. Okay. So I'm sharing this example of what kinds of elements to include in each lesson. And I don't think there's a magic bullet. There are ideas and suggestions, and the manual gives us those. Part of the problem for us is that we're not teachers in school 5 days a week. So we have a lot to think about for an hour or 2 hours whenever we're meeting with the people that we're working with. So this one is an example of these are sisters who work in a commercial kitchen. So they have a little story to read, which comes from, I'm going to, when we finish, hand out some helpful tutor resources. This comes from one of my total favorites, which is Literacy Minnesota. These guys do trainings, 2 trainings a week. If you really want to learn and spend a lot of time, you can work with literacy, and that's on my list that I'm going to hand out.
And that's free?
It's free. It's free. It's an amazing, amazing resource. Okay, so these students, the idea of doing a lesson plan is to have a goal each time. That's the key thing. And in this case, these 2 sisters work in a kitchen. So what their lesson plan includes is a little printout that I downloaded from Literacy Minnesota called "The Kitchen is Busy." And this talks about a prep cook. And the 2 sisters I work with happen to be prep cooks. So this is their life right here. And what my goal became for this lesson plan was, let's listen. So I read first, they read with me, they read together and by themselves. Then we talk, practice speaking. What do we see in the picture? What does this story tell us? What's it about? Vocabulary, new words. It can be overwhelming. So a great thing is everybody, LitNet is great enough to supply everybody with a notebook. Write down, keep a log of the new words. This is what the sisters do. I don't write them for them. They know which ones are the new words that they want to learn. So we look at the words, we act them out. We find them in the room where we are. A bag. Give and get. Very important words when you're working in the kitchen. Okay. So writing. They write their new words down in the journal that they're keeping. And homework. Well, this one prompted, what do you see? What is his job? Where does he work? So, for homework, the sisters took home a list of what and where questions to answer. Because they've already learned verbs and words to be able to write sentences to answer those, but looking at what and where. That's a side takeaway from this. Okay, so quickly, Miguel asked me to mention Google Translate. So everybody uses Google Translate.
Does anybody here not know?
Do you know it? Do you all know it? Our
Like
students.
We
No,
use it in our lesson because my students
Yeah.
don't
Okay.
know English that well, and my
On the
Spanish is
phone.
better
No,
than her
no.
English, but my Spanish.
I
So,
don't use it.
and I try to talk English most of the time, but sometimes we just need,
Just put the
That word to
the
clear.
word to, to
Yeah.
move on. So
yeah.
move on. Yeah.
So I should, instead of saying everybody, I should say all of our students know Google Translate. So,
If I say something, then she goes like this.
thanks.
You type it in, or speak it in, and then push her. Change it. Yeah, yeah. Well, and this is all we do for technology, but it's
So,
I think the reason I asked her to talk about Google Translate is because we had a little debate of whether Google Translate was good or not to use, and so I think it can be good and it can serve both purposes. So
Everything
Yes.
in moderation.
And
right,
so-
right, exactly.
It depends if if you
You're not
feel
relying.
like you can't get through at all without using it, then you might realize you've gone too far. But it's that time when the person just doesn't understand, and then it opens up a door.
And one thing that we decided to do, the two sisters that I work with every week, is, you're using Google Translate all the time. Bring a couple of words each week that you've looked up, because that also helps me as the person working with them. Oh, why did you look up that word? Let's explore the word. So let's try to use the Google Translate as a way for them to be doing homework. Thank you for writing that word down that you looked up. And what does that tell me about you and your life that I can help build on? So Google Translate becomes a helpful tool in a way.
And they also may not remember the word, like they looked it up, but it's not built into their vocabulary. That it was good for the moment,
Right.
And they can talk about it in context. Like if it was something they looked up at the doctor's office, then you can have a conversation about the doctor's office.
Exactly.
Or have
Exactly.
them add it to your word log.
Add it to the word log. That's right. And then, exactly, because next week, doctor's office. Right? That's what we're going to talk about, body parts first. And then we're going to build on that to when we go to the doctor. Yes, that's a great example. So Google Translate is, has a lot of possibilities. And you have to just think creatively about how you use it. So, okay, quickly. The last thing is, these are some helpful resources. I'm just going to run through them really quickly because we have a lot to cover. But I wanted to share some of them. And the first one is the one that I used in the lesson plan, which is Literacy in Minnesota. I just put the websites here. You can Google them and find them. And these are all, Literacy in Minnesota is free. You sign up the first time you use it, and they invite you to trainings 2 and 3 times a week if you want to do them. And they're from all kinds of levels, and it's a wonderful, wonderful program. It's a statewide program. And so one thing that I love about them is the kitchen is busy. They have a whole ESL story bank that you can access for free. And this is from the beginners ESL section. So that's my favorite. They've got a doctor's visit. What happens when you're sick? So that's a great one, and it just is. It's a very, very user-friendly resource. So I encourage people to check it out. And you just sign up, and they'll put you on the list. And you'll get emails 2 and 3 times a week if you want them. And you can decide if you want to participate. Tacoma Community House. So for people who are teaching the lowest level students, the people who are new refugee, immigrant, family who don't know a lot of English, Tacoma is the total best. It has worksheets for people who are just beginner, very low-level beginners, also for higher, but it's especially good for the newest learners. And Intercambio, which is another resource, and these are free. Intercambio, you sign up, they'll be in touch with you every week if you want them to be, if you want to join them, and they are teachers, and their resources are for teachers. They have a huge bank of materials. So those 3 are great. There's also Busy Teacher, which is, I have to put it on here because it's very popular, has a lot of ads on it. It didn't used to when I first got to know them, but if you can handle the ads flashing in and out on you, Busy Teacher has a lot of great worksheets, especially for things like grammar that you might want to focus on. If something comes up and you say, last week I got asked about the word some, S-O-M-E. Oh my gosh.
That's exactly true. Same thing last week.
Really? Okay, so we did some, a few, a lot. And thank you, Busy Teacher, because they also had very helpful worksheets to think about this. I made up my own based on what I saw on there, something that would work with the sisters. And the other one, which I really love too, is ISL Collective. They're British based, so you have to excuse things like I have got many things when you start to reading on ISL, but ISL is a collective of teachers, and so they share their resources on that website, and there's so much to choose from. It takes time, but it's very helpful to think about what's the best thing for the students based on where they are right now.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Add something? I'm going to be talking about using short films, and ISL Collective has, along with exercises. For me, the site is a little chaotic, but it has tons on there, so it is helpful when you're looking for things. And you can look for video lessons, and what they do is they'll take the short film or the excerpt of a film, and they'll embed exercises. And you can use the film without the exercise, but you can also use it with. Like the film will stop, the student has to answer something, and then it will go on. And so that can be a fun thing, too.
Yeah, it's a great resource. And these are all free, which is wonderful.
It is free.
Yeah, thanks.
They ask for, if you like something a teacher created, you can tip the teacher.
Yeah, send it, buy a copy.
Buy a copy.
Buy a copy.
Donation,
So
but it is
do a donation.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful. So quickly, 3 books. English for Everyone. Here's one right here, which is a great resource. And LitNet has these books, and what's wonderful about English for Everyone, and it's level 1 for beginners, is it's a great way to look at progression and building on something that you start with. What's the next thing we want to be learning here?
And the greatest thing for me, my students, is the audio, that it has audio with it.
Yes.
So that makes it much more engaging and much more of a full experience for them.
Yeah, but again, you said building on. For me, I landed up not using it sequentially, so that if something came up and I look at it and there's a lesson, I might jump 8 lessons ahead. So you can do that. You don't have to do it.
Yeah, you don't have to follow it bit by bit.
Yeah.
The other thing that's useful is the answer code in the back of the book, which I encourage my students to
To look at when they're working.
Yes. Thank you. I mean, absolutely, because English for Everyone, students can use it on their own.
Yeah.
Because there is an answer code.
Yeah.
It's so great. So, thank you, Lee, this is my favorite book in the world for beginners, Sam and Pat. And if you haven't seen it, it's very funny. Sam and Pat have a lot of adventures. It's based on phonics. Not based on, it is very phonics oriented. So, especially for, English, it's hard to, again, it's not Spanish. It's not obviously, this is what you're pronouncing next. It's not obvious. So, this is so great because it's so helpful in learning how to speak and say the words. And they have adventures. They can't get, Sam particularly has adventures. He misses the bus, he can't get on, Pat won't let him in the van, and they have to clock out at work. These are things that all of our students run across all the time. So this is a really fun book.
Can I just say a word about
Yeah.
this? I started one of my learners on English for Everyone, and it was really hard for him, and I kept trying to go, and then we were reading from That's Life, and that was really hard. And so at your recommendation, I got this book, and I was really afraid he would be insulted.
Right.
I said to him, we're going to go through this really quickly. And he read the first story, and he looked up, he said, oh, that's a great story. And we've been on this book for over a month. There's so much in it.
I'm really glad.
When you weren't here, Molly, I was telling them that if you go to YouTube, you can get videos that go with it.
Yeah.
So you can find someone reading the Sam and Pat, you can find somebody, the same woman who does the quizzes and the tests. And because this is supposed to have an audio component, but we don't have access to it. But so on YouTube, you can find it. So.
It's one of those things that it seems so simple. I think he understands it, and then all of a sudden,
he has the same experience.
Oh, yeah. So I might go through it again.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And
how do we get this?
Right, that's
you got it right now.
But you can
go home with
Okay,
us?
so I'm gonna have you say the last one for
the last
time
one.
purposes.
Sorry. Okay.
That's okay, no worries. I wanted to see if anybody has any immediate questions for Elizabeth on all that she's presented.
So one question just came up about this book, though.
Yeah.
So, Elizabeth, since they're here, if it's okay with you, people can take these, and we'll order some more for you, and we'll have more in the LitNet office.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I would just check. Some of you are brand new with your learners. Is this the right thing to begin with? It sounds like it's awesome, and there's a lot of great testimonials for it. So certainly something to check out and take home and decide to use. And if you don't, that's fine too. But we'll get more for you, Elizabeth. Does that sound good? So if you'd like to take one today.
In terms of the English for Everyone, we just ordered new copies. So a few of you who came in recently, Debbie, mainly you're the newest one. I gave you a different book, which is also good. It also has an audio, and if you like it, you may keep it. But if you want to try the English for Everyone, we do have it at the office. So.
Okay. There are so many great books. That's part of the struggle. Or so many websites. That's why I said these are a few I use, but there are a lot of resources.
So I have a question for you about today we learned about. I've been using English for Everyone with my beginner learners this year, and it's my first time with a really beginner learner, and so I'm learning how to teach the beginner using this book, and we're not using the audio, and so I didn't know when you say your summary today we learned about.
So let's look at The Kitchen is Busy. So what at the end of this class, what we would just do very quickly is say, today we learned some kitchen words. We learned about give and get. We learned, so this might be 2 minutes, it might be 5 minutes. It depends really on what you covered in your whole time with them, and how much time you had. So I just find it helpful to remind myself, because I'm making notes about my plan, but also with the students, this is what we did today. You did great. This is what we did. We learned about give and get. We learned bags. We learned all these words. You have them down. And next week when we start, we're going to start with some of that. So last one, Oxford English Dictionary. Mine is 15 years old, so I'm not sure if there's newer versions, but what's really great, do we have some here?
We don't have here, but we've given it pretty much everyone one, I think.
And it has great pictures. So it's really great for vocabulary and for the students to look up. There's nothing better than a picture. So, okay. Thanks.
Thanks,
Sorry, so long.
Don't worry, no, that's good. That's good. That's a good one. Okay, so thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth has been tutoring with us for about 2 years. She tutors 2 Afghan women, and she tutors a whole class at Kripalu that we've just started doing there. So, as well as Jessica, they both do 2 different classes at Kripalu. So, something we started doing recently. All right, so now, we were supposed to do this at first, but there was a snafu, but that's okay, we'll do it now. We have Molly here, and Molly has been tutoring with us for about 2 years as well.
Really?
Yeah, about that. I would say a year and a half, something like that. She was a former French teacher, and she has 2 learners, and she's going to do a little immersion example. So she's going to go read something in a different language, and then we're going to do something, and then she's going to read it in a different way, just to see how our learners, how someone that doesn't know the language. Yeah, maybe you should come up here.
Okay.
You
To
can
the
just
front.
go to stand, what, might be better to stand anyway, but just so everybody can see.
Excuse me.
Bonjour toute la classe.
Bonjour.
Bonjour madame. La petite poule rouge. Un jour d'été, la petite poule rouge trouve un grain de blé. Un grain de blé, dit la petite rouge à elle-même. Je vais le planter. Elle a demandé au canard, veux-tu m'aider à planter ce grain de blé? À moi, dit le canard. Elle a demandé à l'oie, veux-tu m'aider à se planter ce grain de blé? À moi, dit l'oie. Elle a demandé au chat, veux-tu m'aider à planter ce grain? À moi, dit le chat. Elle a demandé au cochon, veux-tu m'aider à planter ce grain de blé? À moi, dit le cochon. You get the idea. Were you interested? No? You understand some of it?
Pas moi.
C'est pas vrai. So, and I did, maybe not wisely, pick a story that we all probably know, but I'm going to do it again in a very different way. So, la petite poule rouge, ça c'est une poule. Oui?
Oui, oui.
Et elle a des amis. Il y a un canard. Ah non,
C'est pas un canard.
non, excusez-moi. Ah oui, c'est la petite peau rouge, excusez-moi. Donc, un canard. Il y a... I'm sorry, I got myself all out of kilter because I was running late.
That's
You're
okay.
doing fine.
Okay.
You're doing fine.
Un canard. Quack, quack, quack. Oups, c'est la même page. Un oie. Un chat. Meow. Un cochon. Et dans cette histoire, elle trouve un petit grain de blé. Un grain de blé. Et voilà, juste ici, un petit grain de blé. Et dans l'histoire, elle va planter le grain de bois et il pousse et grandir, et voilà. Maintenant, c'est blé. Et donc, il faut récolter le blé. Et puis, porter le blé au moulin. Et puis, avec au moulin, excusez-moi. Et avec le blé, maintenant, il faut faire une pâte. Comme ça. Pour faire du pain. Oui, vous comprenez pain? Et une image du pain. Ok. Voilà, c'est le pain. Ok, maintenant, je commence. Un jour d'été, la petite poule rouge trouve un grain de blé. Un grain de blé, dit la petite poule rouge à elle-même. Je vais le planter. Elle demande au canard. Veux-tu m'aider à planter le grain de blé? Pas moi, dit le canard. Elle demande la loi. Veux-tu m'aider à planter le grain de blé? Pas moi, dit loi. I don't know if I need to continue.
No, I think it's
a good
good.
point.
Good point.
Yeah.
It's a very simple story, but without reading it with expression, without explaining some of the vocabulary, it just goes over. So it's worth really taking the time to do that.
The scaffolding.
Yeah.
And so for a zero, I mean, so this particular workshop is for between 0 and 3, but for a 0, like when she first read, that's how a person feels. They're just like, but so I don't know a lot of French, and I felt like, oh, the first one was like that, but then the second one, I started picking up on a lot of stuff, and then one of the things I want to point out too is the cognates. So for beginners, it's really important to really point out the cognates. So cognates are words that sound similar in English and Spanish and even French, any Latin-based languages. So that's one of the things that I was picking up, le planté and all these different things.
Yeah.
And if you point those out before you actually read a story, they're on the lookout for those, and it helps with understanding. So.
Yeah. I do have a handout, only it's living in my laptop at the moment, but we'll be sure you all get it, because I talk about that too. And I used to tell my French students, if they did not know the word, just say the English word with a French accent, and you're probably going to be right.
Would it make sense to introduce a few key vocabulary words before you get into the story?
Yes.
Or, well,
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what you were doing when you did the second.
Right.
Like the first version wasn't.
So
A good
planté,
example.
I introduced that piece of vocabulary.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you went through the animals, cochon, and they made the sounds.
Right. And you select, you don't want to overwhelm them with new vocabulary, but select the ones that you think are the most key. And then,
The grain de blé.
well, yeah, right.
and then ask questions about their comprehension or
Afterwards?
afterwards?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I was able to find in one of the libraries was Cooking with Sam I Am.
Oh, nice.
Dr. Seuss. And
That's fun.
mine's a beginner, and but he reads actually
I love that.
amazingly. He reads better than he speaks, which is kind of interesting.
But does he understand what he's reading?
That's
Probably not.
That's the same with my learner. It's amazing how well he can read,
Yeah.
and you sort of get fooled. I got
Right.
fooled to think he understood.
Right.
But at the same token, I just want to say it's a mistake that I found myself making in the very beginning of thinking that their lack of understanding equaled a lack of intelligence. And it obviously, you all know, it doesn't mean that. But I just kind of fell in that trap.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was nice because he has a 3-year-old boy, so I tried to get him, and he's gone home, and he takes the book home, and he reads it to his son. And so his son is exciting. His son's just now got into daycare.
But I'm gonna
It's an
mention
English
it when I
daycare.
do
Last year he was in all Spanish daycare. So now his son's going to be able to teach it. Kind of go back.
Is that a
and forth.
library book?
I don't know if you want to display it.
So at LitNet, we have a children's collection. It's a donated collection from the Ruth Krauss Foundation. So it's for tutors to use with parents, and it has quality children's books that then the learner can keep, ideally read to their children, and then their children get to keep it. We just got in these books, they're called Vox books, that also have like a device built in that you can hear the story to be read. So it's great. A tutor could use that in session. Then the learner could take it home and practice and hear it, and then ultimately it goes to the children. So we do have a collection to use if your learner has children and would like to use children's books. We have one for you, Jen.
And if they don't have any young children, is it still beneficial? Yeah.
You have to check, does it feel insulting? You know, does it feel like content? That's why like Sam and Pat and even this This Is Life, they're adult content, so it doesn't, but some learners won't mind, so you have to know your learner and see if it feels appropriate.
Just to answer your question about questions afterwards, like I might ask, est-ce que le chat a aidé le petit poule rouge à planter? And just sort of act that up so they can understand what that question was. And this answer might be, no. You know, so using the same, yeah.
Merci, Molly.
All right, very good. So now Jessica Treat is going to do an example of well, I'll let her explain it, but so Jessica has also been tutoring with us for about 2 years.
1 year.
1 year,
Yeah.
okay. She's
Going beyond 1 year.
going beyond 1 year. She's an former ESL professional, and she also teaches an advanced class at Apollo, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's funny, they call it intermediate. Well, anyway, it's intermediate advanced, yeah. And I don't have 10 students, but I have
Miguel.
3 or 4, which is really nice. But I began with individual learners, and I still have one. And they're, I would say, beginner, high beginner, and meeting every week. And I was working with different textbooks and eventually with English for Everyone. I have a handout for you. In it, I list just 3 films. We're going to watch one of them. They're 5 minutes and shorter. You know, we're talking about very short films. You don't, if it's too long, you know, this takes up the whole time you have with your learner, and it's not going to be productive.
Excuse me, are you bringing a laptop to your
Yes.
lesson?
So
Okay,
thanks
so,
for asking. Yeah, I bring a laptop to the lesson.
Are they, would a phone or an iPad be too,
I think that a phone. I had a private room in a library that I was doing the laptop with, but I think you could do it with a phone as well. And I did once come out of tutoring and see there was another tutor and learner, and I believe they were watching a film on the video, and he was laughing. What is the man like? How old do you think he is? Do you think the man will change after meeting the boy? You know, so there's some questions for after watching the film. along with comprehensive questions, so forth. And of course, you could watch it too, stopping it and going over things, which I think I did as well. So, so that's just an example of using a short film. In a way, I think a 5-minute film feels like it should be much long. I kept thinking it was 10 minutes. It's really only 5, you know. But there's so much in there. So, do you have any questions?
I was going to say one thing that
Sure.
my learner found really helpful was to have the script in front of him while he listened.
Mm-hmm.
Not the first time, of course.
Right, and that's why I do the closed captions too, even though they're imperfect.
Yeah.
But and of course you could, in showing the film the first time, you could decide to give the transcript. But I tend to prefer showing it with the captions and then going over the transcript and then showing it with the transcript in front.
Yeah, there are I think 3 words that end with GH. And yeah, I had trouble saying that, but enough.
Enough.
You could see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And laugh, and you could see it. And, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. All right.
I also think that if your learner is not at the point where they can watch the whole film and read the whole entire transcript, you could break it down. Just watch a part of it, you know, and just go over that same part over and over again until they can watch the next part or something like that. You know, so you can always cater it to your learners.
Certainly. Yeah.
Right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Had you come across any films in your search that had more things happening that would be easier to tell? This is more like feelings and emotions. As
it's
he
conversation.
The man went into the store and he bought a bottle of milk, or
yes.
you know.
I mean, I think that the present, both the second and third film have more action, and in fact, the second film, like I said, doesn't even have any dialogue. But it's still, and the third one has more action. And I'm thinking of another film right now, which I could send you the link for. It's an old woman in a train station, and she thinks the younger. I have seen this plot in so many different films. She thinks it's he's eating her food, and it turns out it's his food she's eating. Right there. So I've seen so many versions of this, and there's a anyway. So I'm thinking of one I could send you. Seems to have a lot more action in it. Yeah.
Because we're like working on verbs and like just
working on verbs and also conversation's harder.
Yes. Yeah.
Conversation's harder. It's a lot to
talk
take
about
in.
what you're seeing and not just what you're hearing.
Right. There's more action. It's easier to follow. So you could look at the other two and see what you think there. But I can also come up with see what I can come up with in terms of more action.
In French, it's les banalités.
Les
banalités.
Banalités. Oh, the small talk?
Yeah, sorry.
And is that used for you?
I've never heard it, but that's where Google Translate can come in
handy. Banalities, yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to find this film. In the midst of this, I found this great film, and I can't remember the title of it, but it's
So this actually brings me to a good suggestion. Is so we just launched our new website, and we have a tutor cafe, which some of you are already in there, but this would be the great place to share those links
ideas.
and those resources.
Yeah.
So if you're not, if you haven't made your profile and gone into the tutor cafe, I would definitely encourage every single tutor to do it, so that you can ask, you can ask questions, but B, you can share.
We could start a thread for short films.
Sure, absolutely.
The links. It's easier to access the links rather than retyping everything I typed for you.
So that would be a great place to share these ideas and these links to these films. So I would definitely encourage everyone to do that.
And it's easy. Just on the home page, there's a yellow button that says Tutor Cafe. Click on that, it will ask you to set up a profile.
Good.
This, I don't know how relevant this is, but as I'm watching this and hearing this conversation, I was with my tutor yesterday, and something she had written is that she watches TV, and I realized I don't even know, does she watch TV in English or does she just watch TV in Spanish? Like, I've heard of so many people who said they learned to English from watching English television, and I don't know what she watches.
Right.
Like, it could
So that's a
make
good
such
thing to
huge
find
difference.
out, and maybe she can, if she's not watching English, maybe there's something she can start watching.
And also putting the closed captions on, if she is watching
Right.
English, that it also has it in
Right.
English.
Right.
Sometimes too, if you found something you wanted to watch together, that you could each watch and then discuss it. Like if there's a program that you might both like, even if it's a short series, that's an idea too. As something to talk about.
Right.
And, that will last over time, or give you some weeks of content.
Okay, so now I'm gonna actually skip one, and I'm gonna have Jean Lemlin, who is. You tell me how long you've been here, because I've been getting all the year and a half. Okay. So Jean Lemlin's been tutoring with us for a year and a half. Jean was an English teacher at Mount Everett, and she has a demonstration she's going to do for you, and I'll let her explain it.
Okay, so the focus of mine is a little different from the others because it's really meant for beginner to intermediate. Once your student is more comfortable with some verb tenses and has vocabulary, the focus of this is how to get them to talk to you. Because I think a lot of tutors that I've seen in our group meetings have expressed frustration because they know that their learner has got quite a bit of vocabulary, knows some words, but doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to converse. They're self-conscious. So this is something that I have used with my learner, and it's been very successful. I've been very successful with it, and you can vary it easily. So I'm not going to read my lesson plan here, but I'll just give you a sense of, you need to have the preliminary work having been completed, like the difference between present, past, and future tenses. So they were kind of rudimentary words, but still to understand that I talked, BD, and I will talk tomorrow. So simple present, past, and future. So that's kind of a basic understanding you want them to have before you launch into this. Also, how to pose a question. There are some lessons in your English for Everyone book on question posing, and there are some exercises they can practice. So things like, do you like coffee? Did you work yesterday? That kind of strategy, but with basic verbs like that, used in posing a question. And you'll see the simple questions here. I gave you the lesson, the page numbers in English for Everyone, so you can practice question asking. And there's a white book, and the red book is the practice book. There's how to rewrite these words into a question. Are you a doctor? Basic question asking. So we play around a lot with that beforehand. There's also the question words, the starting question words, like who, what, where, when, why, and how. And there are lessons for those connected to English for Everyone, but I went on to the website, English for Everyone, and found, I'll show you on the back, this is an example of one, how to locate worksheets so they can practice them. So this is an example of beginning forming questions with who. And this English for Everyone worksheet site has ads on it, and it can be a little complicated to navigate at first. But on the left-hand column, you'll see the list of all the worksheets you can access. So I told you that in the front here, it's EnglishForEveryone.org. You go to worksheets, and on the left, you'll see the choices. And I picked these who, what, where, when ones. And this is an example of one. So your learner will see here who lives. That person, the learner has to turn that into a question. Who lives here? And that's a practice. And then, so you can see the words are put out of order. This is friend, who best is. Who is your best friend? So they're learning how to pose a question with who. Then the other worksheets are where. Where do you live? So we played around with all of that for a while. And then I take my trusty, I love this little thing. It's funny because no one talked about it at first when I became a tutor. And we have them, and Miguel passed them out, and they are available to you. But it's a whiteboard. And Miguel gave it to me with a pen and this eraser. And as we're going along, I always jot stuff down on the whiteboard and ask them to take a picture of it with her phone, because it's a review for her, and it's all covered with stuff. But it allows me to, I can't corroborate enough what Jessica and Elizabeth and Miguel have said about review, and also about focusing your lesson on where your student is. You have to personalize your teaching, because every person's different, and you might have this great lesson plan, as Elizabeth said, but you can't follow it through because all of a sudden this student has mentioned something about their job and not understanding about ingredients, and then you think, I got to respond to that, and then there goes your lesson plan to the side, and then I can use this, and I can start writing about 1/2 a cup, 1/4 cup, and all of a sudden I'm teaching about cooking ingredients. So get a whiteboard, take it with you every time, pull it out, write on it, have them take a photo, the camera if they can, for their homework and review. But I did this now, and I wanted to encourage my Tanya, just tell her name, to start speaking. I wrote down who, what, where, when, why, because we had already reviewed that, and I could use that as a reference. And I said, okay, so here we go. I'm going to show you here on page. So we've done the preliminary. This is after they've gotten comfortable with those question starting words. And then down here I say, now the fun begins. So I want to get her to speak in sentences and to communicate with me, rather than just knowing vocab and filling out. She can fill out worksheets till kingdom comes, but that doesn't mean that she can, just like the person who can read out loud. Yeah. I noticed that she can read beautifully. What did you understand? So it's not so good. So now this is taking the veil off of that thing that they can hide behind. I went through it as a young student, so that's why I'm so passionate about this. I went to French school, learned French for 8 years. It was the 3 hours in the morning of French, 3 hours in the afternoon of English with the nuns. I knew all the tests and all that. I couldn't speak French when I went into high school because I held back. But I could take tests, I could do all this stuff. So a learner can hide behind the accumulation of knowledge, but doesn't mean that they can use it and converse comfortably. So this is getting them in that uncomfortable position, and you have to watch them struggle, and that's hard. And that's, because you want to pitch in and then kind of shield them from the awkwardness, but you've got to let them struggle. So this is the one activity I did. I would come in to class and write on here something like, I'll give you an example, again, you have to know the present, past, and future and decide what you're going to do. But let's say I pick past tense, and I say, I visited my grandkids yesterday. It might not be true, but I just pick out a sentence. I come to class with something that's simple. And then she has this whiteboard in front of her with who, what, where, when, and why. And I just sit there, and I say, ask me. And she's like, where are your grandkids? And then I say, oh, they were in Amherst, Massachusetts. And I just wait, and again, it's that thing where she's struggling to try to talk to me, get information, and then she'll say how, and I can see her, and she'll say, how did you see your grandkids? And then I'll say, and I say, how did I get there? Yeah, how did you get to see your grandkids? And I say, I drove in the car. And so it's that kind of thing. So you get the idea, but it can, something that you think will allow them to be curious about the topic. So you could say, I made a cake yesterday. And then you just wait. And then she has to ask questions like, what kind of cake? When did you make it? And then she said little rudimentary questions, but there you get the point. And then So I answer and I elaborate somewhat, and then this is the even harder part. After we're all done, I'll say, okay, tell me everything you just learned. And she has to make a paragraph out of it, essentially, and just say, you saw, in the past tense, you went, you made, and we play around with that. So every week we've been doing that, and now, of course, she's relaxed, and I don't even have to do that. I just say, how was work? And then she'll blah, 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 and then I'll say, oh, yeah, well, I went, and then we just start talking. So it's that hurdle, initial hurdle of like, I can't talk to you. I can tell you words, but I can't communicate. Well, you can. Look what you've done. And so that's, and the struggling part, I was telling someone I learned this as an English teacher in class because we would read novels, and novels, there are a couple of them that I read maybe 18 years in a row, and I reread them, and I love them, and I'm all excited about them, and I come to class, and I want to tell the class all about it and talk about it. That's not my job. My job is to get them to talk about it. And so how would I do that? Because the kids love me doing all the work. They just sit there, and they listen, they take notes, and then they're ready. I mean, some of them never read the book and could pass the test because I talk so much, and I like to talk. So I realized I had to stop doing that and then come to class and say, ask what they call open-ended questions, not, what kind it was Atticus Finch and To Kill a Mockingbird. Was he a compassionate father, do you think? Yes. Well, that doesn't do anything. So then I'll have to rephrase the question and say, how would you characterize Atticus? Then they just wait, and then I see them squirming and they're moving, and that's the comfortable part. You have to wait. So I just wait, and I say, okay, I'll wait. And I look at the clock. Okay, how would you characterize it? And then someone says a little more. So that was in like September and October. By April or whatever, they're all yelling and fighting and stuff because they got over that discomfort. So that's one thing I just want to emphasize, and personalizing your instruction and also letting them wrestle with it and sitting back and compassionately sitting back and letting them struggle, and then, you'll see it morphs into something, but it's the conversation that is going to let them feel like, wow, I can do this language. Yeah, I can talk. So, all right, so my email is on here. I'll help anybody who wants to call me, email me, whatever, we can talk on the phone. I'm more than happy to do that. All these tips that you learn, they're just like a grab bag. You use this, use that. You come to class and you have displayed plans of mice and men, and then you just throw it aside, and because you can be spontaneous and use this and find something. And I'm trying to speak fast so we can. Anybody have any questions about this generating conversation?
It's brilliant.
It's good. It's not my own idea. I look on the line and look for stuff, but I changed it into something that worked for me. Yes?
I so appreciate this because my experience is that my learner is excellent at doing the book.
That's right.
Just fabulous. And we're doing English, the white and red book. And so I'm trying in a regular, have a little conversation, and I realize knows nothing, right? So your description of your own experience learning French was very helpful. And I just want to see if you can say a little bit more, because I think this is going to be so helpful. Besides that, I made a cake, or I visited my grandchildren. What are some other ideas that have been fruitful to lead to these conversations? And how do you even really set it up with the what? If you could just be even more explicit.
You mean when
you're trying to get that conversation going?
Okay, so I write on the board who, what, where, when, and why.
Okay.
Just so she remembers that those are the questions, the words to launch the conversation. And then I try to think of something that's going to prevent her from getting an easy way out. So, and sometimes the question I used wasn't great. I mean, the statement I used wasn't great. But I might say, if I focus on something I did that helps her, I think, more than almost the other. Like if I just said, I love.
You said,
Huh?
I went to a party.
Oh, you could say, well, I went to a party. Like, that's an example.
There's going to be
Something I
things
did
to ask
something.
Who
about.
was there?
Yeah,
Where was
the
the
party? That's right. I went to a party.
What was the party for?
When did you go? Who was there? Why was there a party?
Yeah.
I went to a restaurant. I went to dinner. It doesn't take much. The risk is to ask a question that doesn't allow much. But the shorter and the more streamlined the question, the more it forces them to get information from you.
Have you ever tried it reverse? That Tanya says something and then you ask her questions so that she has to speak more?
Well, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
So, but that could work too. That could work too. I mean, I usually when we begin our class, I'll say, "What did you do since I saw you?" And she'll say something. But yeah, and then I guess I could see if the reviewing is important because that's hard. That's hard. She has to remember all the stuff she just learned from me and put it into sentence. But yeah, I could try that too. Yeah.
Do you think it would be possible to, we haven't done like tenses, we're just in the present tense, and I think I could probably figure out a way to do it, but it would not be like something that happened in.
That's right.
And we've done it a little bit, but I'm not getting tangled up in that yet.
It's definitely more limited when you don't have past tense.
It is definitely
Like my learner
limited.
hasn't learned past tense yet.
Yeah. So if you said, let's just say, I like dessert. What kind of dessert?
Why do you like it?
Why do you like dessert? Or I like to exercise. What kind of exercise? Where do you go? You know, that they could do it that way. So
Yeah,
you can definitely do it.
Yeah,
you can definitely figure out. Anticipate what you think they will ask you, and then that's how you know that you've asked something that's going to And
one of the things that I struggle with is when we're trying to just talk is how much I should stop and make corrections, like pronunciation corrections.
That's a good
or
point.
like
That's a good
vocabulary
point.
corrections.
Yeah. And that it's interesting because as an English teacher, when you're correcting essays, that's something you could correct an essay, even a good essay, and cover it with all kinds of notations and corrections and stuff. But what have you done? You've made that person get their essay back, and they're looking at it and they're going, "Oh, geez, I worked 5 days on this thing, and it's covered with red." And then you give her the person an A or a B, but the feeling that the person has is like, oh, boy, so many mistakes. I never did that. If I start to read an essay and I thought, wow, this insight, this is beautifully written. Even if I pick what I want to focus on that person could learn to improve, not everything, because it's just overwhelming and it doesn't feel like you're being supported. So I kind of use that with she'll be talking to me, like I'll go see her at work all the time, and just to say, how are you, and then she'll be talking to me, and I can see her struggling with stuff, and then if that's wrong, that's wrong. But I'm not going to do that. The one thing I want her to remember this time is just don't say, I want to go to the park.
Right.
That's
Don't. Not. Do not.
That is
I said,
so hard.
Honey, don't forget, not. Not to. So in that conversation, I might have corrected her once or twice for a little thing, and the rest I just let it go. So think about that. Like, what do you want to let go by, and pick and choose, so that they're left feeling like I talked pretty well. I only made 2 mistakes, even though they might have made 8. That's a feeling thing. I think
Well, I also don't want to give too much information.
Right,
that's right. There's like so many forking paths that you can go down.
And again, pick and choose, and remember what you had to correct so that you can review it the next time. That reviewing, as Miguel said, you could do it. I mean, we could still review lesson 1. I think, and find stuff. And find stuff, even though I have an interesting situation because my learner is so hungry, and she's always learning other places too. BCC take classes, online classes, and so I have to, I'm trying to catch up to her. In some ways, I'll say, what kind of homework do you have? Do you need help with your homework? And then we'll do that. And so I'm in a different situation in that way, but she still makes mistakes, and she still needs help, and she still needs to be corrected, and she still doesn't want to talk sometimes, but, you know, you just get that, it's personalizing it, and trusting your intuition. You know, if you feel like your learner really needs just basic information about how to greet someone, or how to just spend a whole 2-3 lessons on that, just till they feel comfortable, you know, but trust your own intuition. I would say that's important. I mean, in the beginning, I spent hours going research, lesson plans, and then I start to see them using them less, and then finally it's like sometimes I spend 15 minutes before class. That's all I need, because when I get with her, it just so much is happening, right? And I just follow it, and so,
yeah,
and you know, it's for all of us. It's all a discovery. There's no. Except for Jessica. Yes, if all of us, it's just like such a much discovery, because we haven't, you know, had been in this, but you've been teaching for so long, you really can, whatever.
Yeah, I was just going to say this is a great conversation for me, because I went from like spending most of the time like helping her with her school, her work for BCC, you know, like her workbook and everything. But then it was the same like revelation, like she doesn't. The conversation is the most important thing.
Right.
I even called Miguel a few weeks ago, because I remember saying to her, because we don't see each other for a couple months in the summer, and I said, Carolina, now you have to try to speak English in the summer, so speak with your daughter, because her daughter's little and learning English, and try to speak it in the house. But she lives with her mother, who speaks Spanish. Her husband is not learning English. Both of the places that she works with people who only speak Spanish. So the only time she really speaks English is with me, unless she's reading a book to her daughter.
Yeah, I remember. So that's where an English language television show or something could be really good for her, and it doesn't have to be a huge time commitment, but just, you know, a little bit every day.
Right.
I remember the first learner you were going to connect me with, which didn't end up happening because of a bunch of reasons, but you told me that he has 2 daughters who live with him, and he's been here for, I don't know, 15 years, and they speak perfect English, and they have jobs and stuff, and he doesn't speak any English at all, and he lives in the house with them.
You can't believe it. You can't believe that they're like, but that's it, and it was too much for me to ask that of her.
Yeah.
You know, like they're sitting around the table, and she can't expect her 5-year-old daughter who's learning English at school to like start an English conversation. So I went more and more away from the book stuff, which, like everyone else has said, you know, she can write really well. She, you know, she can do the exercises. And more it was a conversation about, what did you do this weekend? She would show me pictures. She would talk, and I try very much not to, you know, I wrote down everything she said, and then I would correct her so it wouldn't be right when she was saying. And I ended up like picking this book as we were working in a library, and just these magazines that we found, and I would just say, okay, tell me one thing about what is happening in this picture. And she just had, you know, and then I brought this, like this cat thing, you know, and she was just like, oh, what, you know, just what is happening here. So she had to generate out of her own head what she sees.
That's it.
And
generating is key.
Yeah. So I just find it's like so much more helpful for her if that's the only time she's really going to get to be, she wants to be speaking with me and struggling to
And because of that, the worksheets and all that stuff gets, that, it's like percentage-wise, that's small compared to you sitting there with her, and yet she's learning more.
Yeah, and she just says, like, I don't know what I'm doing, and Miguel says, whatever you're doing is good, and then she is like, it's so important what you're doing.
So now, do you feel you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I do. Because I'm hearing all of these, and all these teachers, like, I'm doing like more intuitively.
That's it.
Sometimes you have to recalculate, and it's good to say, is this working? And to say yes. And she might not be, you know, growth is important. Little growth.
Yeah. Right.
You know, if that's what she can get right now, that's the much that is the most that her life allows for her. That's where she is, and that's what Elizabeth was saying about meeting them where they are.
Right,
And
absolutely.
Just,
Personalize it.
Yeah.
It's
right.
And I think it's important for every tutor, and just be patient with yourself, like, because you're, not all experts. So it's like, and like you were saying, she gets to practice with you, and if that's all she's getting, that's so important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, even if you think she's progressing or not progressing, still she's getting that English from you that she's not getting anywhere else.
And revisiting old lessons is really.
Yeah, I start, I just do it like with this, and I just go, okay, we're going to read me this again. Go over this again. Go over this again. And that's how. And so that's how we start. And it's like,
And then
you do your homework
push
at
it
home.
aside and
That's why the notebook too of what you've been
Oh,
doing is good to
definitely.
go back and see where you've
every lesson,
where you've come
dated,
from and
everything. Just put all the
keep us a
details.
short summary.
Yeah.
We've wanted to start conversation groups for our learners, but they're just busy.
It's
They're
so busy.
busy with their
So
kids
busy.
and jobs, and so
Yeah.
it's not about lack of desire. It's really
Right.
about just time
Yeah.
to do it.
Schedules.
It'd be awesome if they could have a tutor and then go to a conversation group with same level learners. And
Yeah.
there was a guide, but it just hasn't come.
No.
Well, maybe you could get a fraction of the 200. Well, of course they're on different levels, but I wonder even if you could get 3 people to come, or maybe they can't come all the time, but they come once in a while.
Yeah.
So I, just
There was a
instead
group
of
this
ruling it
summer.
out, that maybe
Well, yes,
revisit
we've
it.
tried. So
Yeah.
there was a group this summer, which was interesting. It was more for intermediate. It was people who spoke English and Spanish. So the Spanish speakers, people who were learning Spanish, had an opportunity to practice Spanish, and the English speakers had a chance. So if I'm Spanish speaking, you're English, I would introduce myself to you in English, practicing my English. You would use your Spanish, and so it was a nice idea.
Another option too is to use the telephone. Like, if you call her on the phone, she has to talk to you. I mean, she doesn't have all these supports and you say, okay, let's just say class gets canceled, which happens. So what went on last week? What did you do last week? How are you feeling? What's new? What's new is they can't just say car. What's new? They have to say, I want to buy. So talking on the phone is another option. Forces them to speak. Filling in, sometimes 15-minute conversation. At least you feel like, because I feel like you do. If time period goes by or class is missed, I'm like, that's my job. I got to teach her. Which you shouldn't have lost all week. That's kind of the voice in the head.
Right.
But if you talk on the phone, you got something done.
Well, I'm at a point where 15 minutes of conversation would be, to me.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
When I had a conversation with her for 15 minutes, that was like, I wrote it in my notes. This is like
Well, it's a
huge thing. And so what I'm looking for are these kinds of lead-ins,
Right.
like what's new, what people have found are useful for this very beginning level person who super smart,
Yeah.
but very
resistant.
inexperienced.
You can also select some verbs. Let's say you feel that your learner is stumbling with questions and asking you questions, and you think, okay, I have the who, what, where, when, why here.
Yeah.
Maybe to support her, that I could put walk, talk, or ride, or went. Just basic verbs. So use these with this, and that will kind of help her. You're giving her a little structure, and that could support the question asking.
Another idea, it's going in a different direction, but it elicits conversation, is to talk about favorite, like asking, what's your favorite color? And then you have to say why, and they have to think about it. What's your favorite day of the week? What is your favorite food? And so you could go with that pretty far, and it actually elicits a lot of interesting responses, right?
Really, I think that's a good point because the more you pry into what her interests are, the more she's going to want to talk about it.
Yes, exactly.
Because we all like to talk about ourselves, right?
Yeah, right. And try to explain, why do you like that color? Why do you like green? Yeah.
I think photographs too, Sarah's idea of getting photographs that they have to explain. Even bringing photographs, asking her to bring some photographs.
Her own photos.
You bring your family and you talk about those kinds of things. But I think random photos too, just what do you see, what do you notice, or it's a great warm-up and opportunity to hear themselves speak.
I just add this thing, it's just an ancillary thing, but and you probably all have experienced and know this, but laughter is so important with your learner. I mean, it is, to me, it's everything. We laugh like ridiculous things. Sam and Pat, I mean, I'm sorry, but we got into this like raunchy stuff that was so hysterical. And it didn't mean to, but it just kind of came up. Sam and Pat. And then then she says, it's just something, and I kind of took off on it, and we were like on the floor in the library and couldn't stop laughing. And I see her, like I saw her in Cleveland the other day, she said something, and I said, yeah, but what is Sam and Pat doing tonight? And that just did it. It's just like stupid stuff, but it relaxes them.
It's a good point.
It's a good point. I mean, laughter is so central. Just laughing at mistakes, laughing at dirty jokes or whatever it is.
Not being too serious.
Not being too serious, right.
Well, I do it with English, and I've done it with prior learners, because English it's so I'll just, when we come up with something where it's the same word, sounds the same, but it's a completely different word, I do this thing. English.
We do too. We get a local. Like this local.
I say English is stupid. That's
Why? I don't know.
It's English. No, it's true. Germanic origins, Latin, Romance languages come together, and you got enough, rough, through, and always OUGH and with.
Right.
None of them sound the same. It makes no sense.
I was working with read and read.
Oh yeah.
Right. I only spent like 20 minutes the other day on anyone and what was it? Everyone and everybody.
Well, it's
the same. And I say, oh yeah,
basically the same.
But why? And we go. She says, but body, everybody, everyone, and she. And I said, let it go, Tanya.
It's the same.
Same thing. And then we started with anyone and anybody, and everyone and everybody, and someone and somebody. And she keeps saying, she's going like this.
2 different ways to say the same thing.
Yeah, and but she's trying to get the one and the body. And,
right. Is English considered incredibly hard to learn?
It's very hard.
Yes. Like Chinese or something?
Well, I don't know that that's true.
Well, I've heard.
I think that it's very easy to get a kind of level of English where you can speak with mistakes, but you can be understood and can speak. And what's difficult, is all that spelling issues and everything else. But I don't think it's up there with Polish and some of these other languages.
Well, the idioms, though, like we laughed about, how you doing?
But every language has idioms.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be surprised. I really don't think English is. It's
and the do and the
it's
did.
frustrating as
she
hell.
Keeps saying, we keep going over the what did you do? And then she said, do, and do you, I'm forgetting the ones that she starts to give me examples of which, and then I'm looking at them saying, yeah, it makes no sense. I mean.
Well, one's an auxiliary, one's a real verb. They're the same.
They're going different things. But they're examples when there's 2 in the same sentence.
Yeah. And also I'm not trained in grammar, right? So I know what's correct, but I don't necessarily know why, and I wonder whether I should be studying grammar so I could be a better English teacher, because I really don't know.
Okay, so we've come to almost the end, but I just wanted to thank Molly, Jeannie, Jessica, and Elizabeth for your presentations and the time you put into this. There was 2 presentations that we were hoping to get done that we didn't. Molly was going to do a presentation on supermarket money and numbers, and Jessica was going to do a presentation on questions for the first day we meet somebody. So if anybody's interested in hearing about those, please email them and ask them about those 2 presentations that we're going to do. So for the last 3 minutes, I just want to know if anybody has any general questions, and we can end there.
My neighbor was hoping is this being filmed? She's one of the tutors, and I was thinking, could I bring her home one of those packets?
Yeah, absolutely. Please feel free.
Yeah. She's a tutor. She's
it may not have that.
Did you say she's a tutor?
You could stick this in.
Oh, great. This is Liz,
Liz
Chambers.
Okay,
She's
yeah,
got
sure.
the two people, but she couldn't come, so I'll bring her these.
Yeah, you can give her this.
Also, if anybody does not have a whiteboard, you're welcome to come by the
I
office
don't
and
have
pick
a
one up. We have plenty of those. Yeah, it's Barbara's lead. I realized I didn't either because of the. So we have, we have those things available. We have the little blue notebooks. I know everybody probably doesn't have a blue
I don't
notebook,
have
but
one.
we have a blue notebook as well.
I used that.
Well, they were something we gave out last year.
Right, it was last year for
But that was
our
the year
tutor.
before,
Yeah.
But,
this year.
yeah, but they just, we're going back to the office if you want a book, if you want a notebook, if you want a whiteboard.
So
or
right
any
now I
time
could
stop
come
by.
swing
Yeah,
by.
yeah, right after
Okay.
we're done.
Empty notebook for like
Yeah, and we also have notebooks for your learners. So
I'm gonna get
just
this
everybody should feel
This
free
is
to always contact us if there are things that you need that we might have. We may or may not have it, but just feel free to contact us and we'll try to help you with as best as we can. And obviously, these four ladies are available to answer questions about these presentations that they did. And that's pretty much all we have time for. So I hope this was helpful for people. And
Definitely.
we will put it up. We're going to put it up on our YouTube channel. We do have a YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, just put Literacy Network of South Berkshire. If you go to videos, there is a workshop on pronunciation that we did back in March, which I think is super helpful. There's also, this will be there.